Welcome to the Genealogy Gems podcast. It's a show filled with family history research strategies and techniques, news and entertainment, and inspiration. And I'm your host, Louise Cooke. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Genealogy Gems podcast episode number 205. You know, when I got home from the Southern California Genealogy Jamboree a couple of weeks ago, there was an unexpected package waiting there for me. It was from my sister-in-law, and it was brimming with Cooke family treasures. I wish I could just bottle up that feeling that you get as you crack into a box of old family treasures that's been shipped to you without warning. Oh, I wish that happened every day, don't you? You unwrap each piece so carefully with bated breath, not knowing what you're going to discover. I immediately opened a guest logbook from the World War II era. It had signatures of all the Cooke family, including several unknown signatures, which I will gleefully investigate as to their connections to our clan. So I'll keep you posted on any revelations that come out of this treasure box. And I've got one already that I'm writing up to share with you soon. But meanwhile, I hope today's episode is going to be like a welcome surprise on your own virtual doorstep, packed with genealogical goodies just for you. The first surprises to unwrap, though, are two really huge pieces of news that you need to know about. First up, you may have already heard that the end is near for microfilm lending through FamilySearch.org and the Family History Library. Change is really the norm today, isn't it? So let's break down the details that we know so far about this. The last day that you can order microfilm copies of old records and have them sent off to your local family history center near you is August 31st, 2017. Now, after that, this convenient service is going to disappear. You know, I had a great opportunity a couple of years ago to visit the microfilm distribution facility in Utah, and it looks a little bit like the inside of kind of an Amazon warehouse. It's mammoth, and it's a very expensive undertaking. Certainly not something that you open or close lightly. I'm really thankful that in the decades before the internet, FamilySearch devoted so many resources to helping us all gain access to those hard-to-find records. FamilySearch did put out a press release about this. They explained, and I quote, "The change is the result of significant progress in FamilySearch's microfilm digitization efforts and the obsolescence of microfilm technology. Digital imaging has made it easier to find ancestors through the internet," end quote. So let's first look at the obstacle they mentioned. Again, they say, the cost of duplicating microfilm for circulation has risen dramatically, while demand has decreased significantly. And in one of their Q&As that they put out, it says, at the same time, it has been increasingly difficult and costly to maintain the equipment, the systems, and processes required for film duplication, distribution, and access. Now, let's look at the good part of this announcement. FamilySearch is redirecting its microfilm lending resources to providing more and better electronic record access. Most of the Family History Library's microfilm vault has already been digitized, and it's available online, or it will be in a very short time. According to the website, this amounts to the equivalent of over 1.5 million microfilm rolls, and it includes the most requested collections based on past microfilm lending worldwide. Well, FamilySearch hopes to finish digitizing its vault by 2020, or at least the records that they have the permission to digitize, and that's really key. Unfortunately, some of the films they do have will not be digitized, and that's because of contractual limitations and things like data privacy or any other restrictions that might already exist on that microfilm. So you'll have to look to the FamilySearch catalog for access details for the records that you want. So what's to do next? Well, don't panic and do act. So first, I would encourage you to use the microfilm lending service while it's still available. After August 31st, you'll have to go to the Family History Library yourself to view these. And of course, that's in Salt Lake City, Utah. You could also arrange for somebody else to view them for you. A great way to do that is to get in touch with folks through the Random Acts of Genealogical Kindness Facebook group. People will often help you out for free there. Or you could hire a researcher. Or most commonly, what I will do is to use the FamilySearch catalog to identify the records that I want. And then I'm going to probably attempt to locate them through other repositories and websites too. In fact, you can do this right from FamilySearch's catalog entries. So click where it says View this catalog record in WorldCat for other possible copy locations. And this will take you directly to this items listing at worldcat.org. And of course, WorldCat is just an enormous multi-library online catalog. So at WorldCat, look for either a copy at a library near you or a copy at a facility that maybe participates in interlibrary loan. That would be great. You could have it sent over to your local library. And really, this isn't that different. This is the same process that you already have to use to find copies of books that you want to borrow, because there are many books at the Family History Library in Salt Lake City. That's the only place they are, and that library doesn't lend books out. You can't order them and have them sent to your local family history center. I've put tons more information on my website about finding all these free digitized records on the FamilySearch website or its partner websites, which includes those commercial genealogy giant websites we're always talking about, Ancestry, Find My Past, and MyHeritage. And even though you won't be stopping by family history centers in the future to look at microfilm, you can keep visiting them to get that free access that they offer to the library editions of these genealogy giant record websites, and many others as well. I've linked to a special announcement and some how-tos in the show notes for this episode. It's episode 205. So just go to genealogygems.com, hover your mouse over podcast, click the Genealogy Gems podcast, and just navigate to the link for number 205. And I've reached out to FamilySearch to try to get some additional information if I can. So far, I haven't received that information, but I am working on it. If I learn anything more, I will certainly report to you here at the podcast to tell you all about it first, okay? So keep listening. And of course, be sure, if you haven't already, sign up for my free Genealogy Gems email newsletter. That is the best way by far to stay in the loop. And there's other big news out there. I'm really excited to share this today. RootsMagic software is finally integrated with Ancestry.com. Now, they've been promising this for a while, and I've been watching them do final tweaks on its beta version over the past few months, making sure everything is working just right. And now it's here. The most important part of this integration is that you can now synchronize your online tree that you have at Ancestry.com with your master genealogy database tree on your RootsMagic software on your own computer. And this feature is being called Tree Share for Ancestry. And I'd like to read to you a little bit here from the RootsMagic blog. It says you can transfer people, events, notes, source citations, and even pictures between the two systems. And of course, that means between Ancestry.com and your RootsMagic software. It says RootsMagic users also gain the ability to easily share and collaborate with others by giving family members access to their Ancestry online tree. Using the new Tree Share feature, family members can then synchronize the latest changes and additions to both the online tree and their desktop computers. And RootsMagic also works with FamilySearch's family tree, so you can then use RootsMagic to update FamilySearch too. So this makes it easier than ever to search across all the major genealogical record websites that you subscribe to, and to keep your discoveries all together, right? Organized and in your RootsMagic software. You can get both of these updates, and it is an update to RootsMagic. The update has the tree share and the ancestry hinting. And you can get that update whether you are using RootsMagic 7 or RootsMagic Essentials, which is that free trial version. So this is really fantastic news, and there's a lot more detail on my blog, including a full-length tutorial video from RootsMagic. So we'll have a link to that in the show notes. And some exciting news around here at Genealogy Gems is that we have a new video class for you. So those of you that are premium members, you have access to this new class. And all of you listening right now can head to the show notes and you can watch a free, little short preview of this new video class so you can see what it's all about. It's called How to Create a Free Historic Map Collection in Google Earth Pro. This 1-hour class shows you how to curate your own custom permanent collection of hundreds of gorgeous historic and vintage maps from around the world. What could be better? And get them all organized and ready to use, really specifically customized to your family history research. This is just one of nearly 36 different full-length video tutorial classes that we have available exclusively for Genealogy Gems premium members. And of course, members also get the premium podcast. And you get a brand new episode every single month. And the entire back archive of all the episodes as well. So it's pretty awesome. So head to the show notes or just go straight to the website. You can hover your mouse over Premium and click on the Premium Video Class tab. You can see the entire list of classes that we have currently available at any given time there on that page. And if you're a Premium member, just go ahead and sign into the website. And then when you click through on those links, you'll get access to all those great new videos and the new one on creating your own historic map collection. And finally, I am happy to say that this episode today is brought to you by the 4th Annual Northwest Genealogy Conference. It's hosted by the Stillaguamish Valley Genealogical Society north of Seattle in Arlington, Washington. Centering on the theme, Where Does Your Story Begin? It's 4 days packed full of genealogy. There's going to be well-known and respected keynote speakers, including our friend and genetic genealogist, Diane Southard, speaking on DNA, Kenyatta Berry of Genealogy Roadshow fame, speaking on Caribbean research and using slave schedules in research, and Daniel Earl, he'll be speaking on putting history in your family history. Starting off with the free day Wednesday afternoon, speaker Peggy Lawrenson will address beginners' issues in her Genealogy 101 presentation, which is also a good refresher for the most seasoned genealogists. There's going to be such great genealogical information for all levels, and it'll be a lot of fun, too. And I can tell you that because I have spoken at this conference in the past, and it is really terrific. Between classes, take a chance to meet a distant cousin with the cousin wall. You can participate in the genealogy-related scavenger hunt and the Wednesday evening meet and greet and the Friday dress as your ancestor day and much, much more. So head to N like North, W like West, GC for genealogyconference.org, nwgc.org for details and to register. Check it out now. Registrations are limited, so it is really good to get in early. The conference is going to be held August 16th through the 19th, 2017. It's going to be a great show, so don't miss it. MyHeritage.com is your home for global genealogy research. The site boasts the most geographically diverse membership in the world, with a strong presence in many European countries. Search for cousin connections worldwide among more than 86 million people on a site that operates in over 40 languages. Powerful proprietary search technologies at MyHeritage.com dig deeper and with greater accuracy into billions of historical records and online trees. This is the only major genealogy website that offers automated hinting on possible matches in digitized historical newspapers. And now, MyHeritage offers autosomal DNA testing too. They're jumpstarting their DNA database by inviting members to upload their own and by sponsoring tests in certain parts of the world. I'm looking forward to the geographical diversity I anticipate from their DNA data. So head on over to myheritage.com and expand your global genealogy research. That's myheritage.com. You've probably found wonderful old photos and documents in your research, But that's not exactly exciting stuff to your kids and your grandkids. The truth is, the non-genealogists in our families aren't captivated by the same things we are. But you can change all that with Animoto.com. Start creating fabulous videos about your family history that they won't be able to resist. And you don't have to have any special skills. With Animoto, you drag and drop your files in, like photos and even video clips. Pick from their professional styles and huge music catalog, and voila, you've got an awesome video. I've made dozens of these, and my family loves them. Hey, my grandson didn't mention the Legos that I gave him for his birthday, but he did thank me for the video that I made. You've got to try this out for yourself. Visit Animoto.com. I recorded this interview with Melissa Barker, the archives lady, before the news broke about the end of microfilm lending from FamilySearch. But I don't think we could have timed a conversation about using archives any better. If we don't have easy access to microfilm records, in some cases, we may be just as well served by finding those original records, those gems that may be buried in archives. So, with that in mind, enjoy listening to my conversation with the archive lady. Talk about going back to the archives. You know, we love finding stuff online, and that's great, but there are always times where heading to the archives is the place to be. And to help us kind of tour and prepare is a wonderful archivist who's been a longtime listener of this show, Melissa Barker. Hi, Melissa.
Hello, Lisa. How are you?
I'm doing great. And it's so nice to have you on the show. I know I've heard from you here and there over the years, and you've been a listener to Genealogy Gems, but I know that you are an archivist in your own right. Tell everybody where you work and what you do.
I'm a certified archives records manager in Houston County, Tennessee. We are a county archive, so that means that we're a government entity. I have been the archivist for 6 years here, and I'm privileged to have started this archives. This county did not have an archives, and so 6 years ago, several of us got together and decided we needed an archives to save our records from deteriorating. So I became the archivist, and I'm enjoying every minute of it.
That makes you a hero in your county, right?
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
We are trying to save what we can because so much has been lost because we didn't have an archives until recently.
I'd love to hear, what are some of the items that caught your eye that you knew that if an archive didn't get set up, they were going to be lost? What kinds of things tend to be in danger?
Well, just all of our original records in a county archive or in any archive, these original records sometimes are stored in attics or basements or in places in rooms where there's, water present. And many times county officials, state officials, and even just regular people don't realize that this is endangering their records. And especially in a government entity, we have records that we are required by law to keep forever. Mm-hmm. And so keeping this forever means you have to preserve them and take care of them or they're going to be destroyed.
Exactly. And I know when we watch shows like Who Do You Think You Are, people often notice the white gloves they sometimes put on, they sometimes don't put on. What are some of the logistics of working with these kind of precious and often rare and probably very delicate items? And are there things that we should be incorporating in our own use and touching of our own items?
Well, the use of gloves, that has been a controversy in the archives world for many, many years.
Yes.
And so what I can tell you now is that today the thinking is that really we only need to wear gloves when we're handling photographs. The reason being is that we have found that wearing gloves and handling documents, first of all, we don't transfer anything onto the documents to damage them, so we don't need to wear the gloves. Also, when you're wearing gloves, you lose your sense of textile sensation. Mm-hmm. And so if you're holding the document, you may damage the document because you can't feel how you're holding the document. And so a lot of times in archives nowadays, you don't have to wear gloves for just documents and things like that, but you do have to wear gloves with photographs because your oils and dirt will transfer onto photographs and they can be damaged.
I know everybody probably listening is looking around their home office and then thinking about in their closets and wondering, what things should I be paying attention to first? If I can't do it all, I can't get everything into the right, acid-free archival bins, what do you suggest that people really zero in on first if you have to make a choice?
So I always suggest that you locate those original, one-of-a-kind documents, birth certificates, marriage certificates, anything that is original, one-of-a-kind. Now, it may be microfilmed somewhere, but you have the original. And so I would start with those documents first. I would also start with photographs, because those are originals as well, and those tend to become damaged a lot faster than our documents because of storage, because of humidity, because of temperature. And so, I know that when we look at what we have, that it can be overwhelming. And so I always encourage people to start with their original documents and original photographs.
In your position, do you find yourself having to try to do restoration? And what seems to be the most common kinds of restoration you're doing?
One of the things that we do in our archives is we don't do as much full restoration as we do preservation. And what we like to do is we clean documents and photographs. And that is a process where we use archival sponges that are dry. They don't have any chemicals on them or anything that's wet. And we run these over the documents very lightly and very carefully to remove any soot or dirt. And then we, encase them in Mylar sleeves or whatever it needs, like an archival folder, to keep them protected. But yeah, we have to unfold our documents because we like our documents to be as flat as possible, because when you fold your documents, it creates creases. And each time you fold and unfold those documents, those creases become more ingrained into the document, and eventually they can tear apart.
Yes. Oh, I've seen that in some of my own. So that's a good thing to know, to lay them out flat. Is that I've seen those sponges before. Is that something that the everyday person can purchase? And I know there's a couple different archival companies out there. Is that something we might be able to try to use ourselves?
Absolutely. Yes, there are online archival supply companies. Amazon has them. You can get them just about anywhere, especially in the archival companies. But yes, and using them is quite easy. The one thing you need to remember when you're using these sponges is that you lay your document flat on your surface, and then you put your finger or hand in the middle of the document, and then using the sponge, you'll lightly rub the document an outward motion from the middle of the document outward. And you take tiny steps, and you just work on a small portion of the document, and then you move to the next portion. And so that way you won't tear the document or do any other damage.
It's not something to do when you're in a hurry, is it?
No, it's not.
Or under pressure.
Right.
How about when we want to make our trip to the archive? I know each one is probably a little bit different, but I imagine that there are some guidelines that folks should keep in mind so that they don't walk away disappointed, and that they're as prepared as possible to get as much done as they can. What do you suggest, particularly for the first-time archive visitor?
One of the first things that I always suggest to genealogists and researchers is to call ahead. And the reason you need to call ahead is because you need to make sure that they're open. Even if you look on their website or if you have something with their hours on it, it's quite possible they've been changed and their website hasn't been updated, or that particular week they're having construction done in the building and so they're closed that week. Mm-hmm. And so even the day ahead or the day before you go. That close, because you just don't know. Some of our archives are only manned by volunteers. And so sometimes some of these volunteers, none of them can show up that day, and so they don't open. Oh, and so right. It's very important that you call ahead and make sure they're going to be there.
Very good point.
One of the other things that I like to encourage people to do is ask about parking. I know that these two things don't really have anything to do with the actual research, but it's really important so that your visit is a successful one. genealogists seem to forget about parking. I know,
we're excited
until you get there. And an example I like to give is the Tennessee State Library and Archives in Nashville, Tennessee, which is very near me. They're a state archives for the state of Tennessee, but they only have about 15 parking places during the week.
Oh, wow.
And then the parking garage is down a very tall hill. So if you don't want to go up a hill, call ahead, find out about parking, and make those arrangements. Also follow the rules in the archive because, they're there for a reason. Like in our archive, we have some display cases, and I have signs up that say, please do not lean on the glass. Well, I find people always leaning on the glass. And if you don't know what the rules are, don't be afraid to ask. Ask the archivist, can I bring in a camera? Can I, bring in my laptop? Those kinds of things. Do I have pull slips that I need to fill out to ask for records? The archivists are there to help you. So please ask them your questions.
Oh, that's a really good tip. I remember the first time that I went to the California State Archives, and they had this amazing collection of newspapers on microfilm that I was dying to get my hands on. But I remember I walked up to the front desk because it was a pretty large place, and I knew there was probably some rules, and I didn't know where they were posted. And I remember just saying to the gal, this is my first time here. I was just wondering, could you just kind of give me a quick rundown of what I need to keep in mind? Do I need to have quarters in my pocket to put them in the machine to make copies? And do you allow pencils or pens or bags or whatever? And it feels so much better to know that you've kind of covered those bases before you get into it, rather than having somebody tap you on the shoulder and say, no.
Right. And if you know all these things up front,
yes,
then when you get there, then you can go straight to doing research.
Yes. And that brings me to my next question, which is access. I remember not long ago, I was heading to a national conference, and I stopped at a very local small library, a public library. And when I first walked in and I asked about the newspapers, which I'd already confirmed in their catalog that they had, the initial answer was, no, you can't look at those. And of course, I don't like to take no for an answer. So, I worked on him and was very kind and just explained who I was and what I was doing and what my goal was. And then when he realized, okay, you're kind of serious, in reality, there was no rule against viewing or requesting to view those public records in that public location. But there's always the busyness of the person or how difficult it might be to access those items. And so my question is around, are there any items in an archive that we might expect they will not allow access to? So we're not kind of coming into surprises. And if there's a hesitancy or a concern, or you think that it might be a very unique or difficult item, is it better to make an appointment ahead? How would we deal with it so we're not disappointed and we're not pushing somebody into something that isn't really allowed? Do you have a sense of that? And does it vary dramatically by location?
I would say that every archives is different.
Yeah.
And so you need to really learn their procedures. Mm-hmm. And just like you said, you need to do your homework up front. If they have a website, get on their website. See if they have index of their records, and so you have that information already with you. That helps the archivist know what you're looking for. And remember, when you go into a facility, any facility, and when I say archives, I like to explain that includes archives, that includes genealogical societies, historical societies, university libraries and archives, and also, and I'm real kind of preachy about this, it also includes museums. What I like to say about museums and about archives in general, they have what I call a front room and they have a back room.
Yes.
And so when you walk in, you're in the front room. You're in the research area. You are in the places where they want you to be and they allow you to be. But there's also a back room, especially in museums. In museums, you walk in and there's the displays and exhibits and all the pretty things. Mm-hmm. But almost all museums have back rooms that are filled with archived documents. But you would never know that because you don't see it.
Right.
And so what you need to do is you need to be very courteous. You need to be very nice to the archivist. And I'm not saying that because I am one. I'm saying that because if you're nice to them and you're not demanding, and if you're not telling them you want it now,
right,
they would be more likely to work with you. And so you need to talk to them. They may have books on the shelves, and they may have some other things, microfilm to use on the microfilm reel. But you need to ask them about four particular collections that you can't usually see, and ones that they won't necessarily offer up to you. And the first one is vertical files. If you don't know what vertical files are, they're a wonderful collection of, I call it a hodgepodge of documents. These are filed in file folders and then in filing cabinets. And they are a mishmash of documents, and they're filed either by surname or by subject name. And within these file folders could be literally anything.
Yes.
And so ask about vertical files. And then ask about manuscript collections. I believe manuscript collections are one of the most underused collections in the genealogy world. And again, they're usually not seen. They're in back rooms. So ask about manuscript collections. When you talk about manuscript collections, you want to make sure you're going to find and look at the finding aid. And so ask the archivist for the index to their finding aids for manuscript collections. Also, loose records. Loose records are an interesting type of collection in an archive. Normally you see these with court records. You see these with marriage records. Court records, we usually see these big bound books. They're minute books, and that's what they bring out to us to see. A lot of times with those minute books comes along loose records, and what these are, what I call the working papers of the court case. They are the affidavits, they are the subpoenas, they're anything and everything, and those are archived separately from the minute books. And then the last one that I tell genealogists to ask about are unprocessed records. These are also in back rooms. In archives, we get donations of records almost on a daily basis.
Oh, wow.
Either from the public, or if you're like me, I'm a county archivist, and so I get records donated from county departments. And as archivists, we can't get to everything as fast as we'd like to. And so these unprocessed records sit on the shelves waiting to be processed so that they're ready for the researcher. But that doesn't necessarily mean you can't access them. Now, in some archives, yes, they don't allow you to access them. But like I said, explain what you're doing, show a seriousness like you talked about, and ask them, do you have any unprocessed records? They're not totally unprocessed, because when they come in, an archivist will do an accession of the collection, which means they do almost sort of a topographical cataloging of just what's there, because they want to know what's there.
Right.
And so they know what they have. If an archivist is good at what they're doing, they know what they have on their shelves. And so ask them about unprocessed records. Those are the four that I always like to tell genealogists to look for.
That is great. And that's exactly what I was hoping for, because those things are out there. And like you say, it can't all be out on the main shelves, and it can't all be completely indexed and processed. It's wonderful to hear that there are new things coming in every day, but it's really a partnership, kind of working with the archivist and coming in prepared so that they are prepared to help you. I love that. Finally, I know that we are all carrying around our smartphones and our tablets. There are better and better cameras on these items, as well as the apps that help us scan. So do you have any tips for people in terms of getting those copies of images? And do you feel like that the smartphone or the tablet are the way to go? Or do you find that there are still some archives that still aren't comfortable with that? What's the current feel on that?
Well, I think that archives are slowly coming into the technology world.
Yeah.
And, in my archives, I allow patrons to take digital photographs of documents. I mean, why not? I mean, it's not hurting anything. But you need to ask, and you need to ask what the procedures are for that, because some don't still. And so that is most important. Also, when you're using a mobile device to take images of documents or records, I have been a genealogist for 27 years, and so it's important to source your documents.
Yes.
And one way to make sure that you do that is when you take a photograph or an image of a document, or in a book especially, make sure that you capture the title page.
And that's a really great, quick source citation, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And that way, when you get home and you see this page that you took this photo of, you won't be like, where did I get that from?
Mm-hmm. I like to jump to either the table of contents or the index. Sometimes they're calling time and you've got to leave, but to be able to quickly snap that so that you can at least go through that at your leisure and see what else maybe was held in that book or that item, and then maybe make a second trip. So
right. And another really good thing to do that I always encourage genealogists to do is that when you're working with manuscript collections or any kind of like a vertical file or anything like that, take a photograph of the file folder or take a photograph of the end of the Hollinger box that has all the information on it to go with whatever documents that you have photographed that was in the collection.
Great tip. It's easy to get excited, isn't it? And you find something, you start taking a bunch of pictures and you realize you walk away and you have not any record of where that came from.
Yes, and as the archivist, I watch genealogists and I see them taking their photographs, and then I stop them. I say, wait a minute, let's take a picture of the title page, or let's take a picture of this, because they're excited by what they found and I'm excited for them, but I'm also there to help them maybe leave with those sources so that they know what they have.
Well, that's wonderful. And how wonderful for everybody to kind of just keep in mind now, the archivist is your friend and they are the ones with the know-how. And I imagine when you work so hard on preserving and restoring and keeping these collections that you want them to be used, right?
We do, and that's what you talked about at the beginning of this segment, that you talked about finding things online, and that's great and wonderful, and there's so much coming on every day. But let me tell you something, these archives across this country and across the world, they have records on their shelves that have not seen the light of day probably since they were produced. Right. And there's only so much staff in archives and so much time in a day that they can only get to so much. And so I like to say that, there is probably about 5 to 10% of the total genealogical records that are online. The rest are sitting on shelves waiting to be discovered by the genealogist. Mm-hmm. And another thing, too, is that when we use our archives, when we visit them, when we email them, when we call them, the archives will take those down as a statistic, because they have budgets to have to worry about. And so if they can report to their higher-ups who are handling their budgets that they have this traffic, that they have these people coming and using their facility, then maybe their budgets won't get cut.
Exactly. Support your local archive.
Exactly.
Use them as the resource that they are. And how exciting to think that there's that much still yet to be brought online and discovered. And yet, I think we've also made the point that we always start online, because going online is what's going to help us to be better prepared, get the phone numbers, get the directions, go through the catalog. And then when we hit the real location, we can make something happen. Melissa, I love talking with archivists. I could do it all day long. Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your expertise. We appreciate it.
Well, you're very welcome. I enjoyed it.
Melissa and I continue this conversation in Genealogy Gems Premium Podcast episode number 149, which airs later this month in July of 2017. And Melissa will share her top tips in that premium episode for finding and using original manuscript records for your genealogy. You've probably heard about them. You may not have used them, but they really are gems. And having the help of an archivist like Melissa to kind of guide us through and help us tap into these little-known resources is really terrific. And as a bonus, for those of you who are listening to this episode through the Genealogy Gems app, I had Melissa record a few summary thoughts on that topic of manuscript records. Remember, the Genealogy Gems app is free in Google Play, and it's only $2.99 for Windows, iPhone, and iPad users in your app store. As I travel the world talking about genealogy, folks are always stopping me and asking for my advice on organizing and securing their family history research. And my standard answer is plant your family tree in your own backyard and share branches online. Planting your tree in your own backyard, it means keeping one master family tree in a software file right there on your own computer. That gives you ownership, control of privacy and security, and one central place to organize everything that you learn about your family. And of course, my software of choice and the one that I use is RootsMagic. I find that its tree building tools are second to none. And with RootsMagic Web Hints, you can see what record hints are available on FamilySearch, Find My Past, and MyHeritage. And now you have the ability to synchronize your RootsMagic database with your Ancestry tree and get those Ancestry.com web hints right there inside of RootsMagic. These are features that are really critical and they're exclusive to RootsMagic. So plant your tree today in RootsMagic and watch it grow. Get started at RootsMagic.com. Okay, have you visited Backblaze.com/Lisa yet? If you don't have cloud backup for your computer yet, everything on it is vulnerable to loss. Your pictures, your master genealogy database, files for work, the everyday business of your household. Losing all of that at once is as devastating as it sounds. That's why I did my homework and I found a cloud-based backup service provider. I chose Backblaze. It runs in the background 24/7, automatically saving copies of everything, including my precious video files. Did you know that some of the other leading services actually skip your video files when they do the backup? Not good. And Backblaze is so easy to use. I love their free app that allows me to access all my files if I need to from my smartphone or my tablet. Most importantly, the service is totally affordable for real people. It's just $5 a month. So don't wait to ensure that all your files are safe. Do it now. Back them up like I do with Backblaze. Head over to backblaze.com/Lisa and get that $5 a month deal. Check it out for yourself. You could even do a free trial. That's backblaze.com/Lisa. Our kids and grandkids are the key to our family's history and legacy being passed on. And that means that we have to teach its value from a really young age. And that's why I get excited when I see innovative ideas on how to do just that. Well, I met my next guest at the Family History Conference at BYU about a year or so ago, was taken by her warmth and her enthusiasm for family history, and I've been following her blog ever since. So I am so happy to welcome to the show Nicole Dyer of FamilyLocket.com. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Lisa. So happy to be here.
Tell us a little bit first about you. You're a pretty busy mom, aren't you?
It feels that way. I'm a mom of 3. My husband and I live in Tucson, and we have a 7-year-old. He just turned 7 last week, and a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old.
Wow, that keeps you busy. And you still have time to blog.
Sometimes.
So none of us have an excuse, because if Nicole could do it, we can do it. And
it's my passion.
Yeah, and FamilyLocket.com is kind of unique because it looks to me like it's a labor of love by not only you, but you and your mom.
That's right. My mom and I started the blog together a couple years ago. Since she loves genealogy and we share that passion, I thought, who better to work with than my own mom?
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I know that there's a lot of different topics that the two of you cover, but let's talk about the kids and getting the kids involved in family history. And I think the blog post that really caught my eye recently was your heirloom hunt. Tell us a little bit about that. What was the idea behind the heirloom hunt?
Well, I had been working on an inherited traits chart for tracking DNA traits that are passed down through the generations. And my son had so much fun with that I decided to make another type of thing that would go along with that, a worksheet that tracks the objects that are passed down through generations. And so my little 3-year-old daughter and I went all throughout the house searching for anything that could be passed on from older generations and considered an heirloom. And we just had the best time looking for fun things and answering her questions about it and video chatting with my mom to find out more.
So were these things all things that had been passed down to you already, or were you also targeting what's in our family that we think would be worth passing on?
Oh, that's such a good point. We mostly looked for things that I had inherited from my mom, but in other classes that I've taught with kids before about heirlooms, we have talked about that. And I asked the question, what would you want to be an heirloom someday? And how can you take care of that object now? And how can you incorporate that into your journal or diary so that future generations know why it was important to you?
Exactly. You know, it was so funny, Nicole. Yesterday I was going through kitchen drawers. We all have the junk drawer in the kitchen, right? Oh my gosh. And I took everything out of it and I cleaned the drawer and I was going through it. And I've been collecting old cookbooks and things that are just precious heirlooms to me from grandmothers and mothers and all that. And I noticed that in one of these, I had tucked several different pages over the years as I was raising my children. I would make lists of what meals I could think of that I could do. And sometimes I even assigned them to a day of the week because it was always one of the biggest burdens as a mom is, you know, it's 5:00 and you're like, what am I making for dinner? And so I had to make sure that I had meals at the top of my brain that the kids would eat, that my husband would like, that I could make quickly. And it's so funny how many times I made these lists and I almost tossed them. In fact, I think I did. And then I pulled them back out and I looked at them and I thought, how funny that I just so treasure these other items from my mom, my mother-in-law, my grandmothers. And this actually, these little pieces of paper represent so many years of the struggles I had and the decisions I made about taking care of my family. And I sewed them all together and I tucked them in one of the cookbooks because you never know. Somebody else might look at that scratching down the generations and go, not too much of a repertoire of meals here, but she was trying. So I kind of like that idea of not just the heirlooms that we have inherited, but the ones looking at our things from the perspective of the future generations.
You know, that reminds me of something that I have told my son that I want him to have that is going to be an heirloom for our family. Mm-hmm. Can I tell you about it?
Oh, please.
Oh, he was born with a birth defect called spina bifida. So he walks with a little bit of a different gait and he has a little bit of weakness in his legs. And sometimes he says to me, Mom, why can't I run as fast as my friends? And one of those days we were talking about it and I told him he wanted to win a race with his friends. And I told him, you know what? I did a race once and I didn't win, but it was amazing. Let me tell you about it. And I got out the medal that I won from the race. And as we were talking, I showed him the medal and told him, this is going to be yours someday. And the story of the race was just that it was a super hard triathlon. I had never done one before. And I wanted to do the triathlon to show him that I could do hard things that I'd never done before. And this was when he was just 2 years old. And I had been thinking about his future and wanting to model the things that I wanted him to have, resilience and courage. And so I told him, this was a hard race. I had to train for 2 months every day to learn how to swim that far and to learn how to bike afterwards and to learn how to run after that. And it was really hard and I didn't win and I wasn't very fast, but it was fun because I was doing something hard and I finished it. And this is my medal for finishing. And I showed him the medal and he held it and he said, Mom, this is super cool. And now sometimes he gets that medal out and he looks at it and he thinks about it and he knows it's going to be his someday. So that's kind of my heirloom that I want to pass on to him someday.
Oh, I love that. And it represents personal best. And in the end, it's really about, right, our personal best, what we can continue to push ourselves to do. And what a wonderful thing to not only pass down, but to use as a tool for that role modeling of the values that we really hold dear.
So true. And it reminds me that I want to record more stories and more memories about the things that are special to me so that my kids will know what they were for. And I mean, telling them now is probably the best. Then they can have that memory of us actually talking about it.
Exactly. And then if you do write it down, it all resonates and all kind of builds on each other. And then they realize, wow, this must have really mattered because she talked about it. She wrote about it. Well, I'm looking at the blog post and I'm seeing a basket of some of the heirlooms. I'm guessing that your mom passed down to you. So sometimes kids look at stuff and they go, that's old. Why, what's interesting about old? Tell us about some of the items and your kids' response to them.
Sure. So this particular basket of items, I kind of tailored to my daughter, which is one of the principles that I talk about a lot when I talk about family history and kids. And it's to think about your child's interests and then try to find family history objects or stories that fit those interests. So my daughter is interested in beautiful things, necklaces, jewelry, clothes, and she loves books. So I tried to think of some heirlooms that kind of match that description. And of course, we all have things like that are passed on, jewelry. And I had baby clothes that were once mine when I was a baby. And when my mom came to visit when my children were born, she brought some of those with her so that we could put them on the baby and take a picture and say, look, you're wearing the same clothes mommy wore when she was a baby. So that was a really fun thing to do. So anyway, I wrote down some of the clues on our heirloom hunt for my daughter were what is something beautiful hanging in mom's closet. So we went to my closet with her basket and she looked up at the wall and saw some necklaces. And she said, these are pretty. And I was like, right. And I pulled down one of the necklaces I inherited from my mother-in-law, who several years ago gathered around all of her daughters and daughters-in-law and said, each of you can choose one of these necklaces that I don't wear anymore to have as an heirloom. So the one that I selected was a chunky gold chain with a big, beautiful locket at the end of it. And of course, my daughter thought, wow, this is really pretty. So we pulled that one down and put it in the basket and wrote it on our heirloom inventory. This is from Grandma Dyer.
That's wonderful.
And some of the other things that were in the basket were a ring that my mom gave me. And when we video chatted with her and asked her, where was this ring from? She said, that wasn't mine. I don't remember that. And I said, yes, it was. You gave this to me when I was a little girl. Don't you remember? And she said, oh, yes, now I remember. That was Grandpa's. So it was my grandpa's. So for my daughter, it was several generations. It was her great grandpa that she was looking at. Something belonged to him. So that was fun.
Oh my gosh. Now, see, you've touched on a couple of things. We could talk all day about this. Now, what you just mentioned was that this process was geared to your child, but actually it helped secure and preserve a memory that almost got lost, right?
Yes.
Your mom's memory of the ring and making sure that that gets recorded. How awesome.
Yes, it's so tricky sometimes remembering the provenance of the items that we care about. So getting them out and talking about them as soon as possible, I'm learning, is really important.
Yeah, and our kids can be a wonderful catalyst for that. And Nicole, I just jotted it down on a little piece of paper here in front of me that we're expecting our first granddaughter in about 3 weeks. And of course, I had 3 daughters. So I've totally enjoyed having 2 grandsons, Joey and Davy, but the idea of a granddaughter is just too scrumptious to explain. And I have boxes of some of the earliest, baby dresses and things of my daughter, all 3 of them, and particularly clothes that I made for them. I did a lot of sewing when they were little, and I jotted down, oh my gosh, I need to pull out some of those. What a special moment that could be to bring one of those little tiny dresses over to their house. And like you said, put the baby in it, take a picture and just share with my daughter that it meant that much to me, that I've been hanging on to this in boxes, that I get nagged a little bit sometimes. My husband's like, do we really need all these? We do. We need all of it. And I love that idea of not just keeping them and writing it down, but really using them to show what's really important to us. So this whole, and that's what amazes me about your ideas and this whole exercise, is that it touches on so many different elements of family history, right? I bet this meant a lot to your mom. Talk about that video chatting you mentioned.
Well, that actually turned into something much more fun than I thought. I just thought, we'd get the basket of items we'd collected and kind of get the story from her on why she passed it on, because I kind of had forgotten some of the things she told me about them, and we wanted to record it. Well, after we'd gone through everything in the bucket, she said, kids, I've got some fun heirlooms right behind me in this trunk. And she was sitting in my old bedroom where she has put a trunk she inherited from her great aunt. And inside the trunk it was full of all kinds of heirlooms that she had inherited. And I hadn't even looked through the trunk. So it was fun for me and my kids. And she opened it up and started pulling things out. And one of the first things she pulled out was an old dress that she wore as a kid. And my daughter, she is famous for going in her closet and getting out the boxes of baby clothes and trying to put them on again, even though she's 3. So she was so excited to see a little baby dress that my mom had worn. And it was bright red. And my daughter kept saying, I want to put that on. That is so cute, Grandma. Her little reactions were so fun. And my mom got out a vest that she wore during the 60s. And it was so quintessential for the 60s. I was just dying. It was so funny. And then my son showed up, and he, of course, wanted to see some different things other than girls' clothes. So at that point, she got out the Navy engineer toolkit that my grandpa used in World War II when he was in the Navy. And wow, that was neat to see. And of course, what better than a uniform when she got out the Navy pants that my grandpa wore in World War II, stamped with his name. We were all in awe. And my son was saying that he wants to try those on when he gets big enough. And then a funny story came out. My mom said that those Navy pants were so small and Grandpa was so skinny when he started in the Navy. I think he was just a teenager, that they don't fit anybody in the family. My brothers have tried them on, and my brothers are not big guys, but they can't fit in those Navy pants. They're too small.
Oh, it's perfect for your son.
Yeah, so as soon as my son gets to be about 12, I think it'll be perfect.
Well, now see, I'm jotting this down because I have a whole upper rack in my closet of my husband's military uniforms and his father's military uniforms. And I have 2 grandsons. Okay, I'm making a note. How neat. Now, I have to ask, did you turn on something so that you could record that video conversation that you had?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked, because I am wishing that I had. I didn't think of it at the time, but if I could do it again, or the next time we do this, I'm going to turn on Audacity in the background and just record the whole conversation so that I can write down all the stories afterward.
Absolutely. And in fact, one thing that you could use is there's a program called Jing, Jing, and everybody listening can jot this down. Jing,
yes, I'll have to.
Yes, it's a free video screen capture. And so I use their more sophisticated program called Camtasia for a lot of our video production, but they have this free version and you can just turn it on. It captures everything going on your screen. So as I'm looking at your blog post, I see your mom's beautiful face on the screen and your daughter's talking to her, and how wonderful to be able to just capture that. And it'll just be nice video footage that includes the audio that you can then keep as a digital file as well as a video. How fun.
Wow, wonderful. Thank you so much, Lisa. I'm totally going to do that.
Absolutely. Well, I know that you have some resources here on your blog post, so tell people what they can grab here at FamilyLocket.com.
Sure. When I first started doing ideas for children in family history, I put together a kind of a web index of ideas that I found all over the web, including some of my own. And I put that under the tab Children, Web Index of Ideas for Kids and Teens. And it's just a list of over 270 articles and blog posts that are ideas for teaching, doing, and sharing family history with children and teens. And I've got some of my favorite things that we've tried and a bunch of things that we haven't tried yet. But there's just so many fun ideas out there of teachers, moms, dads, and people who've shared activities and things to do that can help get kids interested. So I've kind of put that all together. And there's so many more ideas being produced and put out there that it would take me all day, every day to keep adding and updating this list. So I'm not updating it, but I am pinning to Pinterest when I see ideas. So I also have a Pinterest account that has lots of different categories of ideas for kids. So I've got coloring pages and craft projects, one board, and then some other boards for games and different things. So I'm keeping those updated.
Oh, how cool. And also on the heirloom hunt, you've got some downloadable resources so that everybody listening can do this with their own kids and their grandkids, right?
Yes. I made some printables. That's one of my favorite things to do when I do a blog post, so that everyone can give it a try. So if you want to download the PDF files or the doc files, I wanted to put the document files up there for Word so that everyone can add their own clues to their heirloom hunt. And I put some clues on mine that I knew would go along with the heirlooms that I had at my house. Like I knew we had some blankets that my grandma had made. So I put a clue, something that keeps you warm. But on your own heirloom hunt, you can change the clues to whatever. And some other ideas for clues could be anything superlatives. Kids love something that's the oldest or the best or anything like that. So if you put those kind of clues on there, it could be really fun to go through grandma's house and find the oldest thing that she has. Anyway, so those links are at the end of the blog post, and you can download them and print them for free and use them with your family. I hope you do.
Oh, they're wonderful. I'll have a link directly to this blog post in the show notes for this episode. Of course, Nicole's website is familylocket.com, and you do it along with your mom, Diana, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we'll have to have both of you on the show sometime together. I would love to hear about some of your collaborative efforts over at Family Locket.
That would be fun.
Oh, Nicole, this was a wonderful idea. I am already brimming with ideas I need to go run off and do now and get ready for my new grandbaby. And
so excited for you.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It was delightful to talk.
Story of passion, family, and forgiveness in southern Italy. That's the subtitle to our new Genealogy Gems book club featured title, A Family History Murder Mystery I think you're going to love. I'm Sunny Morton, the book club guru, here to tell you about Murder in Matera by journalist Helene Stupinski. As a child, Helene heard stories about her great-great-grandmother who fled Italy with young children in tow after being involved in a murder. Nobody knew who was killed, why, or how, but some details were startlingly precise and consistent as they were passed down through the family. She had to leave her husband behind. A man named Grieco helped her escape. A child was lost on the journey. Years later, Helene embarked on a 10-year quest to learn the truth behind this family legend. Her journey took her to Matera, Italy, which she describes as a province tucked away in the farthest reaches of southern Italy, filled with such intense poverty that no one really liked to talk about it. On her first trip, Helene got to know the region, some distant cousins, and a bit of local history. But she came away with very few answers about any actual murder, other than that some of the locals didn't want her prying into it. But she didn't give up. It took more trips to Italy, more determination, and a small band of sympathetic helpers, but finally she found the 600-page criminal file from November of 1872 that was the key to solving this family history mystery. It was true. There was a murder, but it wasn't exactly as the family had said. In fact, the truth was so different that Helene realized her family was not even who she thought they were. And that meant Helene herself was not quite who she thought she was. The rest you can read for yourself in Helene's new memoir, Murder in Matera, a true story of passion, family, and forgiveness in southern Italy. It's part history, part reimagined family story. Look in the show notes for this episode for more about the book and information about her first family history memoir, which you may even want to read first as it's the prelude to Murder in Matera. That book is called Five Finger Discount, A Crooked Family History, and it's a longtime favorite of mine. Both books will entertain you and inspire your own continuing quest to solve your own family history mysteries. I'm Sunny Morton, Genealogy Gems Book Club Guru.
In Premium Podcast episode 149 later this month, in addition to that conversation with Melissa Barker about manuscripts, professional genealogist Leslie Huber joins me to talk about researching your family health history through good old-fashioned genealogy research and interviews. I think you'll especially like our tips on finding and understanding an ancestor's cause of death. So again, that's going to be on Premium episode 149, and I hope you will join us for that. And next time I talk to you here on this podcast, I'm going to have some happy news. I believe we will have a new granddaughter by then. So until then, thank you so much for listening, friend. I'll talk to you soon.